Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup, where we look back on an epic weekend in south of France, Monaco for World Rally, and Daytona in Florida, which both were just incredible races. But first, a bit of news. What's going on in the news? Well, I'll tell you one thing that's going on in the news. Lewis flipping Hamilton he's
everywhere.
Non-stop.
He's everywhere. Actually, it's quite funny talking about last weekend because both those races, the Monte Carlo Rally and the IMSA race, they're blue ribbon events. They actually start the season with the most famous events. So it's quite interesting that they would do that. And both ended up being cliffhangers right until the end. So we'll talk about those in a minute. But yeah, on the home front, the news was just red. The new Autosport magazine, the new monthly, Lewis on the cover, everything's red. But then about 38 pages, it seemed, half a book writing about Lewis's chances and what's coming. Martin Brundle, of course, has come out and said, Martin said his best is behind him, but then went on to say that if he's still 96 to 97%, he can win races. Well, yeah, the best is obviously behind him. He's not, as Martin says, at 40, you're not quite as sharp and hungry and greedy, but he's still got the talent there. And if he likes the Ferrari.
See, I think he's definitely as hungry and as greedy. I think he's definitely there. But I think the sharpness is one thing that goes. So in professional sport, that's one thing that goes. Can he win the championship, Tiff?
Well, it depends on I still think he can. Yeah, I think he can win it this year. And I think he's joined Ferrari more hoping that the 2026, the new regulations, that Ferrari will have the best engine and win that. But it's just the press he gets. I mean, at Fiorano for his first laps, the Italians were just packed around the fences that surround the track there.
Yeah. They've done it for others. They've done it for Vettel. They did it for Schumacher, but not quite as many. And I think one of the key points that I took out of it, social media is a lot bigger now than it was back in any old day. But the biggest ever, the largest ever picture, the picture that got the most likes on Instagram for Ferrari was Charles Leclerc winning at Monaco, his home race, got, 2.5-3 million likes. But Lewis has surpassed that with his Godfather photo. He's got 5.6 million likes. So, so he is the real thing, the real deal, and he certainly pulls in the fans. No question about that.
So, that's great. We don't know how quick he was, and that was only an old car. They can't use their new cars until, when is it? Bahrain, February the 23rd. We've still got a month to go before they're actually out in their real cars. So there's this razzmatazz in London with the reveal of the colour scheme. I don't know what that's all about. I think it's a sellout. It's a sellout.
It is a sellout. I spoke to so many people about it, and they're excited about it. So they're going. It's quite a good idea, actually. It's like a stadium event, and they're all going to go there. But they're all obviously just.
We'll have a car there.
Everybody will have a car, and they'll reveal their liveries. Car.
And drivers promised as well, or not?
I'm sure they will. Otherwise,
when is that anyway? Do you know when it is?
I don't even know when it is, but it's, I think 20th of February. It has to be before the 20th of February because that's when the cars are.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it is coming soon.
I mean,
can Lewis will beat Charles? Have you got any doubt of that whatsoever? Because Charles not exactly any slouch.
Plenty of doubt. I mean, they'll be 50-50. I think they will win races. They'll take points off of each other. The British Grand Prix, if the Ferrari is the best car or up there as one of the top two cars, I think they'll both win races. Charles will win Monaco again, and Lewis will win the British Grand Prix again. Quite what will happen to the other circuits. There are definitely tracks that every driver has his favourite track. For some reason, I can't put my finger on why, but there's certain tracks that the combination of fast corners or slow corners. Max Verstappen on the fast flowing corners seems to have the ace of those. Mind you, Max Verstappen has the ace of most.
He's got the ace of most. Yeah. What's your favourite track?
Definitely some
race at.
Le Mans was epic because it's such a long track and every different type of corner. But in Britain, the Brands Hatch Grand Prix circuit was pretty epic. I drove a Formula One car around the Race of Champions, in the supporting event. So that's pretty epic. Spa, of course, springs to mind every time. And if you want a real track, then it's the street track down in Hong Kong, down in Macau street track, just absolutely epic. So no, they will both win races this year. I'm fairly certain of that. Who will win the most?
Who'll win the most? Or not the most? Who'll get the most points out of those two? Who's going to?
I think Lewis might pick up the most points because he'd be steadier. Charles might be pushing it a bit harder than Lewis does to make sure he's beating Lewis. Fascinating. I mean, it's such a fascinating season.
I can't wait.
Such a fascinating. Nor can I. Absolutely.
Even though I'm in a piss with Formula One because they just.
You're still upset.
You're still upset. But you imagine you're doing a motorsport special about, or you're trying to preach to the world. We do every single week on this podcast. We're preaching to the world with our 1 hour special, from club racing, from driving a Ford KA to the pinnacle of racing. No, it's our ball. You can't play. Tough luck.
Do you ever criticise anyone in the FIA or any drivers on your podcast at all?
Yeah, but they wouldn't listen to this. Right, moving on. Autosports Award this week, which I'm going to, actually.
Yes.
The 4 youngsters that are in the finalists. Do you want to kick off?
Who's going to be the next Lewis Hamilton? Mind you, after Lewis Hamilton, we've already got George Russell and Behrman and Norris.
Yeah.
I don't know who won. I have to look back. There's a funny thing. Although we have the 4 finalists, some of them are unable to win it due to contractual obligations. So I think, for example, Ollie Behrman was in the final 4 twice and didn't win it. So I kind of think, well, on earth, how could Behrman not? To me, he was the most talented young kid of the 4. But he had the Ferrari contract, and you're not allowed then maybe to drive a Red Bull or whatever. What is the free car they get a test? It's a McLaren, I think, now, isn't it? They changed it. It used to be Red Bull. So there is a slight thing hovering under the surface as to who claims it. But whoever it is, the 4.
Let me just add to that as well, because a lot of the kids that don't have money, and even the ones with money, when they're offered a contract young from someone like McLaren have got them because they'll say, okay, this is a 10-year contract and you're with us, you're a young driver now. Whereas the ones that can afford it, and there's quite a few of those, but not too many, but the ones that can afford it don't sign a contract until they're there. So it's a bit of a riskier strategy, but one that will pay off if they end up being good.
It's such a tight this year. I mean, there are 4 incredibly talented young boys. Freddie Slater, I
was just going to say,
my
favourite, I have no disrespect to the other lads, but because I know Freddie and I really hope he wins. But
he's out in the Middle East now, winning or leading the Formula Regional Middle East Championship. Arvin Lindblad, everybody raves about. He's now down in Australia or New Zealand, contesting the Tasman and leading that, winning races out there. So they're 2 very highly touted. So they're probably 2 favourites. But then you've got Louis Sharp, the Kiwi, who won the GB3 Championship. Again, very highly rated. And this Dagan Fairclough was a wonderful story. I've forgotten the story now because I have to revise it. But he had no money at all and he was doing nothing. Then what, he raised something? He had a one-off in something. Then he won a scholarship from, I think it was a game play station type of deal that put him in this Formula 4 car, GB4 car or Formula 4. Oh, I forget which one he won. Anyway, he dominated that championship. Absolutely won it from nowhere. Real surprise. So an incredibly natural talent with very, very little money behind it. So the fact that he's on that list is gives hope to everyone. It's an aspiring thing for every young driver in Britain now. It's, spend as much money as you can in Formula 4 and Formula 3. And if you can get the Autosport, prize, they can leap you from poverty to, getting a sponsorship and getting a contract and everything else. So it's a huge, huge award nowadays.
Dagan's he's the oldest at 18. They're all such young puppies, aren't they? And Freddie's 16, the other 2 are 17. But then you think Kimi Antonelli is 18, he's in Formula 1, which is just crazy.
Well, I of course won the equivalent award in 1976 when I was 25. It was the Grover Award then, and it was a journalist awarded it, so a long time ago. So I won the same equivalent awards. I was very proud of it, and it got me a professional Formula 3 drive. So it took me out of being a self-funded Formula 4 driver to professional Formula 3 drive. So it gave me that huge lift up, which made such a difference.
Isn't it? It's crazy in life, these sliding doors and a bit of serendipity and what happens, with your winning your Formula Ford.
Yeah.
In Autosport, it was Autosport, wasn't it? Yeah, it was.
Yeah, won the car, then won the Grover Award, then got the Durex scholarship.
Amazing. You never used it, did you? With your boys this weekend, your 3 lads.
Yeah, they're not racing. Too expensive. So you're there, are you? So you'll be there. You'll be first on the blower to text me the results.
Yes, indeed. Good. Right, where are we going first? You want to go to Monte Carlo or Daytona?
Yeah, Monte Carlo. That's the World Championship. Obviously, Daytona's only an American championship, even though it's a huge international event. Yeah, Monte Carlo bus is always a great way to start the season. Nobody ever knows if it's snowy or icy or tarmac. 5 Toyotas. Toyota put 5 cars in for this rally. They always most of them run 3 full-timers and then part-timers. Hyundai had 3 cars and Ford just the usual 2. No hybrids this year, different tyres this year, so some changes. And on day one,
Hankook, isn't it now?
Yeah, Hankook. And of course, you never know what the conditions are going to be like. I mean, again, it didn't snow much, but there's always ice. There's ice.
That was the problem. There's lots of black ice. There's lots of
ice.
Which
I don't actually know, because we'll come to it later when we see them struggling. But the manufacturers team have they call gravel notes. They're called cars going around on the morning of the rally to find out where the ice is, where the snow is, what the conditions are, wet or dry. I always wonder what the privateers have and whether the information is given by the organisers, because you see them hammering along on tarmac. And there was one stage, I think, on the Saturday, then they arrive in a sort of wooded area, which obviously you'll think wooded area, maybe it's a mine, and they just go from tarmac to black ice. And they're going at 5 miles an hour, pop, 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 the old turbos popping off as they go at about 10 miles an hour around a hairpin bend and slithering and slipping. It's such a challenge. And also this because they cut the corners so much nowadays. And so if you're running 9th or 10th on the road, the mud's all over the road.
Yeah.
So, you know.
They do really cut the corners, don't they? I noticed that. With racing, as you know, motor racing, the top level, they'll have spotters everywhere for the weather. Yeah. And in Mexico City for Formula E, the team that I was with, they had all their drivers. They had a load of cars there, dropping off guests and whatever. And all their drivers were on a WhatsApp group. So when they drop the guests off, they go to a specific point and they're just taking photos of the sky in a specific direction and giving weather updates, because no one knew whether it was going to rain or not. But yeah, interesting.
Can't they trust the Mexican weather maps? Then apps. I've got that.
I don't know. I guess not. Well, they do in Formula One as well. Formula One is very famous for having, especially Silverstone and the like. They'll have it in Toaster and all different places around.
See it
weather spotters as soon as it comes.
But it was a fascinating rally. Thierry Neuville led day one and was leading to about stage 5, but he was the first to make an error. And it was just on a downhill, hairpin. And apparently he said his experience with the tyres was his excuse. I mean, all racing drivers and rally drivers obviously had excuses. And basically, he just braked too late. I think he did the same the next day.
He did exactly the same, the identical corner. It was the most bizarre thing. On the identical corner.
You can see the panic. He tried to turn early,
Yeah, it must have been something about pace notes or the grip or something. But you would think you wouldn't do the same on the same corner.
But then he ripped a wheel almost off the back left corner. I mean, it must have been a suspension trailing arm or something that went. And then he proceeded to drag this wheel that was sticking out. It started turning initially, didn't it? And eventually just locked solid. So he's dragging this thing. It was about 10 kilometres left to go. And yet he dropped less than 2 minutes driving the car with 3-wheel drive. But it put him out of the rally. I mean, that was his day gone. And really from then on, from the middle of
So surely that opened the door for Elfyn, and Elfyn was going to go on to victory, surely.
Unfortunately, of the 5 cars that Toyota entered, they decided to enter this part-timer that they tend to have up their sleeve, a man called Sébastien Ogier, which apparently won this rally a few times before. And of course, so it ended up being a 3-way battle, well, 2-way really, between Ogier and Elfyn Evans, who was doing a fantastic rally, but he's got Sébastien flipping Ogier in the same car. But Tanak had some problems and dropped back. The Hyundai leading pair dropped back. But Adrien Fourmeau, this French guy that was in Ford last year, he's moved into a full-time Hyundai drive. He had a tremendous run, and he picked the right tyres on the last day morning or something. And halved the lead to Ogier. It was only about 4 seconds by Evans, who had this fantastic 3-way battle going to the final stage. But nobody actually overtook anybody in the end. So Ogier held on for his 10th win at the Monte Carlo Rally. I don't know how many he's done. I'd like to know what his percentage hit rate is, but maybe he's done 20, but he can't have done 20.
But it's still massive, even if he's done 20. Yeah. It's still massive.
Elfyn the bridesmaid again. And he keeps ending up flipping Ogier. Go away. Leave me alone. Leave me to win this championship, please. And And Formeau held on for a really good third place for Hyundai.
What's his history, Formeau? Who was his father or uncle? Or
don't know. He just came up through the French national scene. Then he got a Ford drive. And he was with the Ford World Championship last year. So he would have done a lot of tarmac rally. The French tend to do a lot of front wheel drive tarmac stuff when they're younger. But the surprise really was Kalle Rovanperä, because this world champion from 2 years ago has come back now to be a full-time Toyota alongside Elfin and the Japanese guy, Katsumoto. But he was just off pace all rally, this mercurial kid. So it just shows, you go away from your sport, just lose that, little bit of sharpness in the, he's done Porsche Super Cup racing, he's done some drifting competitions, he's been in a Red Bull Formula One car, having a wonderful year.
Yeah.
But it just shows it's not that easy to come back after your mind's been doing other things and be pin sharp in a rally car at 10/10. So interesting to see how he'll come back now after, he actually stole fourth place off of Tanek, I think, on the last stage or two. Of course, the other story, we had this Irish kid, John McAlean, making his debut in the World Championship, in a World Championship car with Ford, taking over the Formeau's seat. But I think he found it a bit of a baptism of fire. I think he was obviously told, bring it home, your first rally, quite rightly so. But it just shows to show how hard it is, because he was really virtually battling with the leaders of WRC2 category. He was 20 seconds behind his teammate on each stage. So he drifted well away. But good for him. He didn't stick it in the wall. And he's had a wonderful, learning phase to learn about ice and snow and learn about his car. So he didn't bin it. That's the main thing. He wasn't spectacular. Whereas Ferrari in the one of the many Toyotas, the Finn superstar of the future, he ended up flinging it off the road and into a big ditch off a banking. So that's the trouble. It bites you. The Monte Carlo Rally bites you. That's what it all says.
Well, like you said, even at slow speeds, where you hit some of that ice, and there's going to be plenty of ice next round, Sweden, middle of February.
Great TV. I keep on watching the highlights of each day.
Well, you say it's great TV. It's great for you and I that can appreciate that. It's dull. There's 14 rounds. They go all over the world. It's incredible, really. Just looking at the calendar, they go from hot to cold to every different
every time.
Yeah.
Where are they next? I forget. Is it Sweden?
Sweden. I just bloody said that. I just said from the ice. It was a brilliant segue from the ice to Sweden. More ice, a lot more ice. 13th to 16th of February, and after that, a bit of sand in Kenya.
You're doing my job now. I'm the one with the flipping calendar, right? Well, you start punching my job now.
I've got Google on my phone. So. A fantastic start to the season. Wish they would get a little bit. I wish it's a bit like my favourite sport to play, squash. You played a bit of squash. Carlos Sainz plays a bit of squash, he was telling me. But it's rubbish to watch. It's just such an epic game. Same with rallying. I'm not saying it's rubbish to watch, but I wish there was a way to communicate it a little bit better to people.
Well, it's always against the clock. That's its problem. It's against the clock. And I think the more and more onboards are helping it, because now the radio signals are so much stronger and the cameras are relaying onboards. Whereas before you used to follow a car with a helicopter for about 3 minutes, and it looks as then you follow the next car with a helicopter for about 3 minutes. They all look the same because they're not they're not deviated. They're not very sideways anymore. Really, they're keeping the 4-wheel drive cars almost as straight as you can. But you appreciate more when you're on board. You see the twitches of the wheel and the grabbing of the handbrake and. It's mesmerising to watch.
Insanely good drivers.
Yeah.
Right, there was plenty of good drivers across the pond.
The wonderful Daytona.
Right, let's talk about Daytona a little bit first. So how many have you done? How many times have you raced?
I think it's
Daytona?
6. I think it was
Best
6.
finish.
14th. Lots of trouble. Daytona's a much harder race than certainly was more so than it is now, because nowadays they've got floodlights all around the interior, so it's almost daylight all the time. But it's about 12 hours of darkness, whereas Le Mans is only about 4 hours of darkness.
Summer versus winter, Northern Hemisphere.
So it was a really tough. And there used to be a lot more amateurs in it. You used to have a field of 84 cars with little tiny sort of front-wheel drive sedans, like little hot hatches.
Were there always 4 classes?
No, there used to be about 8 classes. There used so many classes you couldn't count.
That, for me, was the biggest takeaway from watching it over the weekend was how much faster the top class go to the bottom GTDs. unbelievable, especially on the straights.
The differential was more back in my day. In fact, there was a class, they virtually had NASCARs there. So they had sort of these kids in these sort of V8 NASCAR lookalikes. And we were full throttle around the banking with our Group C car. And I'd catch up some of these wreck of a thing with hardly any windows in it. And this kid up in the High Line, about 180 miles an hour, I'm doing about 190, say, move out of my way. The guy's got opposite lock on and he's fighting it. I mean, nowadays, every car in the whole grid is just full throttle through the banking. So it's a shame so much of the challenge of many, many circuits in every form of racing has been outgrown by the cars being much easier to drive. Because they go around the banking now, they can just have one hand on the wheel because they've got power steering.
Well, of course.
I can remember. I'm holding it. My muscles gone round the banking at 200 miles an hour.
Which is convenient if you want to flip the bird to somebody as you're going past in your Corvette.
Which happened today, yeah. But there's a bump in the track. I don't know where the tunnel comes in the middle of turn 4. I think it's less of a bump now, but it used to be a bump because it subsided. Of course, that's your fourth corner one flat out on the banking. I always remember 2 hours from the stint. You hit the bump and I can't hold the steering wheel any longer.
Wow,
a wonderfully tough race.
What did you race in? Lister,
Lister Storm, a Porsche 935 Spider, Aston Martin Nimrod, Lister Storms. Yeah, so a few varied things, but wonderful.
And how does it compare to Le Mans in terms of the actual track? It looks a lot smaller. It looks a lot more narrow.
Yeah, it's just such a different. You're out in Florida in the sunshine. It's cold, flipping usually cold as anything, and occasionally it rains as well. So it's just a middle of winter. You've got this huge banking. It's such a weird, different circuit. I mean, it's so different to anything else. It's part of its straight attraction. It's not that challenging as a track because it's sort of infield wiggle around, and then off you go around the banking.
Of course, you've got the bus stop now as well, which you never had.
Yeah, I only had it on my second one onwards. I only had once without the bus stop. Only my very first did we go flat out down the back straight. That was a thrill, going up to turn 3 at 200 miles an hour. And it's so steep, that banking. But the bus stop used to be a longer straight in between the first left-right and the second right-left. So you could almost overtake in a little straight between. But now it's almost one corner, isn't it? And they put all these curbs in and flatten that. I was worried they'd all, straight line it and there'd be lots of track limits. But they seem to stick within the curbs. They were quite strict watching that happening.
Well, they're not really built these days for, well, they certainly weren't in your day, but for riding the curbs anyway.
Well, no, yeah.
And fascinating, really, that you've done so many of these 24-hour races. But I mean, the 24-hour master was victorious. But let's talk about the race.
That bloke. That bloke you almost beat in a Ford KA race.
I never said that.
I'm sure you nearly beat him.
Even our lap times were about a tenth apart, and he had dry, and I didn't.
Do you think when Nick Tandy, standing on the podium at Daytona, thought, I'm the first person to win the 4 grand 24-hour races and the Ford KA race against Paul Newman at Brands Hatch?
It was Paul bloody Newman.
It's your new name.
I wish it was.
Well, Paul Newman, of course, used to race at Daytona. That's why the name must have come in the back of my head. But no, because Nick Tandy completed the great quadruple crown, which nobody's ever done before. Daytona 24 hours added to the Le Mans 24 hours, Spa 24 hours, and Nürburgring 24 hours. And the great thing about Daytona is, well, the way it's run now, as you said, there's 4 classes, and you get these 4 races going on. And often the television's got 4 quarters, because you're watching 4 battles. I mean, with an hour
where did you watch it, by the way? Sorry to interrupt, because I watched it on YouTube.
On the telly,
But did you, which channel? I beg your pardon?
IMSA.com.
I should have maybe gone to there. Maybe it's a different... Because I wasn't very enamoured with the pictures that you're getting on YouTube Live.
You're in the wrong
Just a split screen. Okay.
But every class with an hour to go had like 5 cars on the lead lap. So they have the last safety cars with about 40 minutes to go. So they're all bunched.
But I was going to say it was a bit misleading. It's not like they would have been like that if it wasn't for the safety cars, because it made it. But it made it exciting, and it always makes endurance racing exciting now.
Well, they were still pretty exciting even before the
true.
Before they're all close. But so Nick Tandy won it in his Porsche. Sharing with Felipe Nasser and Laurent Vantour.
Brilliant last stint for Nasser, because
he was running second.
Second.
And he had to get
but
by
it was
the other
close.
Porsche.
The BMW, then the BMW got a bit of a problem, but the two Porsches and the BMW, you wondered who was going to win it out of those three, and then the Acura was just.
But I think
behind
to go back, I was wanting to check on the telly this morning because I'm pretty sure the commentators didn't realise or remember Jeremy Shaw wasn't on it. If Jeremy Shaw was still there, he would have spotted it. But I thought she's been dropped from the team. But I think that Matt Campbell, that was leading, didn't put new tyres on. You know, they all came in during the pace car, safety car. And I think he got the lead by not putting new tyres on. Whereas the other Porsche, when Nasser was in, did put new tyres on and dropped back. So, which is why, towards the end of the race, you know, the lead, Matt Campbell, was going backwards. Once Nasser got past him and disappeared, then he had Tom Blomqvist in the Acura catch him up and overtake him for second place. And I think a lot of that was down to the fact that his tyres had gone. But you know, there were three of them battling for the lead with 15 minutes to go, nose to tail. I mean, it was sort of spectacular to watch.
It really was.
Then behind the LMP2 cars, Sebastian Bourdais was one of the winning partnership in that, a name from Formula One and IndyCar from the past. But GT Pro was the one that got the most drama on telly, as you talked about the finger coming out. I mean, it was really bad because who was it? It was Tommy Milner was leading the GTD Pro class in his Corvette, but he had right on his rear bumper the leading BMW. I forget who was driving it, but he caught up Augusto Farfus in the other factory BMW. He was 2 laps down, and Farfus just started blocking him, and it was the most obscene blocking from someone 2 laps down. And so poor old Milner had this other BMW on his bumper. And eventually, going through the horseshoe hairpin, Farfus virtually stopped in front of Milner and allowing the other BMW to come around outside of him and take the place. But they hit bodywork. And in fact, that moment put them both out of the race. They both dropped back with damage and bodywork. So it was some pretty nasty work by Farfus. And he won't be possible.
You know, you want to help your team, but you don't want to cheat. You don't want to, I mean, that's a strong word, cheat, but I'm
surprised that the organisers didn't, you know, because they're onto this sort of thing. You know, NASCAR, we had this big thing last year when they were holding another car up, you know, to get him through to the playoffs. And I would have thought they would have gone to the BMW and said, you know, this is not, you've had enough, let him by. So neither of the BMWs made the podium thanks to all that shenanigans going on. And it was really good for Mustang because the Mustang was just out front, but not by much. They were all on bumper to bumper to bumper. Yeah, all this shenanigans that allowed the Mustang of who was it driving? Dennis Olsen, and was leading to take the win. Alexander Sims in the other Corvette, who was battling hard as well. He got so close so often. Eventually, he clashed with. He went up the backside of the Mustang and damaged his nose, I think. So it was a Corvette second with Alexander Sims, and Sebastian Priaulx was one of the 3 members of the team in the Mustang that finished third. 2 Mustangs in the top 3. So that's Andy Priaulx's son having a good career out in America. And GTD, which is the more amateur hammers, was a British winner. Matt Bell won in a Corvette with his team. So lots of winners, lots of spectacle, but I mean, just entertaining. You can drop into at any time. We had a dinner party. I didn't speak to anybody, but, you know, midnight after they'd all gone away, just check out, watch a bit of Daytona 24 Hours for an hour, because there's always stuff going on in the dark. But, entertaining. Yeah. It's an enthusiast formula. It's not for Formula One people. They'd think, gosh, this is too long. When's the rock and roll band starting?
But you can duck in and out of it, and actually when you duck out, you can. And you know, I'm pleased for Nick Tandy because I think he learnt a lot from following me at the Enduro KA race at Brands Hatch in November, pouring rain.
Convinced.
What's coming up next week? Not a lot.
Well, not a lot for 2 weeks virtually got off. The only thing on next week is this NASCAR clash. But I just want to go back to something I missed talking about last week, because for NASCAR boys, Kyle Larson, the hero, his season's already started because he can't stop going back to where he began, midgets on the dirt. And in January, there's always this famous Chili Bowl. I don't know what's ever called the Chili Bowl. It's the same place it runs. I forget where it is. I haven't written down where it is. I might have written it if I could read all my writing, but I can't. But it's an amazing indoor 2/5 of a mile, or was it 1/5 of a mile track. I did write that down. I can't find my own writing now. Anyway, And Kyle won it again. He won this chili bowl. So he goes out. And Catherine Legg had a go. I don't know how she got a drive, bless her. She'll have a go at anything, Catherine. Good for her.
She's amazing. She's amazing.
Her very first start, she ended up getting tripped over someone else's wheel. Roly poles into the middle. They roll over so easy. Open wheels, nothing on. It's a fifth of a mile. And 300 cars turn up in the week for all the heats, the knockout runs. It's a week of midget racing on the dirt, indoors, 1/5 of a mile. And Larson virtually led the whole way in the final. But in one moment, someone spun in front of me. He went over the top of the other guy's front wheels. Then we're just 4 laps to go, leading under pressure. And they used a cushion. As the dirt gets pushed to the side, you have the slick track in the middle, and there's this big pile of dirt between the edge of the racing line and the wall. But people use the cushion, especially if you're braver and more brave. And even when you exit the corners, where there's a very small straight, but you hardly ever straight because it's a fifth of a mile, Larson was going up creating a banking almost of dirt. But with 4 laps ago, he overdid it. He went right up the flipping wall and bounced off the wall. And he actually caused a yellow, which maybe saved him from getting overtaken. But then and he had this amazing story. Again, American racing, there's so many great stories. He had this kid, Dason Pursley, chasing him all the way. This is a kid who 4 years ago, when he was 17, I think, had a huge end over him on those roly-polies they have. Shattered his 3rd and 4th vertebra on his neck. He was he was said he was a partial paralysis, 4 limbs, all 4 limbs partially paralyzed. And he managed to get all the limbs working and getting back to racing. And all he wanted to do was race again. He was like the parents or someone like that,
Wow.
Anyway, he was the one chasing Larson, finished second. So there's this kid of 20.
Oh, I love his story.
Yeah, 4 years ago.
Do you get many people watching that live?
Well, America, I think it's pretty big, yeah. But
well, you say that, but Daytona, I was really surprised at how few people there were. There wasn't anyone in the grandstand.
Oh no, they're all in the middle. It's a sports car thing. They don't go
right.
The beginning of when they go off the banking into turn 1, you'll see there were quite a few crowds. But no, they've all got their motorhomes, their campsites, their
I saw that
moonshine,
barbecues
going.
Moonshine. It's not 1946.
I can assure you, there is still moonshine at Daytona. I've been there for the Daytona 500 about 3 years. There is still moonshine.
Steve from Motor Passion needs to do another trip next year. So
he's there this year. He's having a holiday. We couldn't get enough people to make the trip happen again.
There must be enough people listening to this from all over the world that want to come on a Motor Passion trip with you to Daytona. So if you want to do that, what does it cost roughly, approximately?
20 people. And it's about $3,000 a head. But it's 5 days.
Nothing. It's nothing.
You go to 4 races. Yeah, you get yourself there. We'll look after you. I'll take you down the beach where Bluebird and Donald Campbell did 300 miles an hour, whatever. We'll have a burger. We go to a local track on the Saturday night to watch a quarter-mile race for the locals.
What's that, Homestead?
No, it's called something. Something.
That's more Miami, isn't it? And next week,
But this weekend, I was going to say with the NASCAR, there is this weekend. The only thing on this weekend is the official NASCAR. It's an exhibition race. Where about 20, not all of the cars go, whoever won races or points, I don't know who's invited. It's a big heats and finals and semi-finals and knockouts. And it used to be held in that stupid Coliseum about an 1/8 of a mile around the inside the Coliseum in still had Los Angeles or which is it? Los Angeles. But this year they're going to the quarter mile Bowman Gray Stadium, which held NASCAR races in the 50s. Was a NASCAR track, but I think they outgrew the place. Couldn't have the big enough crowds. So going back there. So on Sunday, lots of heats and finals. It'll be on telly somehow, somewhere. And not point scoring, but it's where all the NASCAR boys turn up for their first weekend of the year.
Good stuff. And we will probably do a podcast next week as well, even though there's not much going on, because we're going to be with Tommy Bridewell and Kyle Ride, Tiff and I, the 2023 and 2024 British Superbike champions. We're going to have a chat with them about the race of the decade, probably, which is all for this new motorsport special we're doing on Amazon Prime. So looking forward to that. So we'll have a curry on Sunday night, and we'll record the podcast on Monday.
You can tell us who you met at the Autosport Awards. You're going to take the recorder, record people, are you?
No, I am not.
Our man on the spot, interviewing Freddie Slater, who wins the Autosport Award 2025.
Well, if it is Freddie, maybe we'll get him on the podcast next week. Well, no, because next week it's just going to be you and I. But maybe we'll start getting some guests. The people want guests.
Get your little microphone out on your phone. Get in there.
Yeah. On that note, see you next week. Cheers.